Hello, I'm Sophia Lou and welcome to my channel.
Hello guys and welcome to this week's Draw With Me video. As you know, I do these videos once every 4 weeks and this is just where I do an experimentation for an original piece of work. Some of these will become prints and others won't. What you can see here is just me working on the concept in my sketchbook. There isn't much footage of this, it's just me working out ideas, colour schemes on how I want the person's pose to be and the rough idea of colours. And this is what I tend to do in my sketchbooks. I've learned with the sketchbooks to not keep everything so clean, to be really like experimental with the work and yeah, just to try out lots of things. And there's Bella being her usual showboat, coming in to say hi to everyone. Every time I'm filming, this little monkey seems to come in. I'm just giving you a closer look of my concept and what my general idea is. So with this piece, I was really inspired by, we had some really bad storms a few weeks back in the UK, and I really don't like storms. And I kind of felt like it was almost like, this is going to sound like a really weird concept, it's like a storm almost is like an emotion. It's like anger, it's like almost like the weather has built up this frustration and this anger and then has decided all of a sudden that it's just going to go pow and release it, and just all in one frustration. And you can really kind of relate to this in a way. I don't know about you guys, but I tend to like hold a lot of stuff in and then I just explode with anger, particularly if I get really wound up. And this is what I wanted the illustration to almost convey. I wanted it to be really powerful and convey that emotion that she's almost like gripping herself and trying to keep herself in, but the storm is building and raging up inside her until it's just completely released. This is a very experimental piece because I've done a ink wash with this, and it's not something I usually do, but I was inspired after watching Jellybee, I call her Morgan, live stream, and like seeing how she was very experimental with her inks. So with this, essentially what I've done is I've done several washes, as you can see in my little palette there, and I'm using the lighter and the darker to create this almost like cloudy effect. And I tried this in my sketchbook and it seemed really effective, so I was just trying it out and seeing how it worked. And I kind of wish I kept it grayscale because this kind of just works on its own scale by itself. But you'll notice with a lot of my work and a lot when I come to do Draw With Me and with my videos, I'm experimenting a lot. I'm constantly trying out new things because I think it's really important to do that with your work. Not everything has to be perfect, not everything's going to be a masterpiece, not everything is going to end up in that scale that you want it to. Like, not every piece you're going to like, and I think you should accept that and just, you know, accept sometimes that imperfections are there. And there are parts in this piece that I do like, and there's parts that I really don't like. And I think what I like with this is I like the line work, and I liked the original concept with the stormy clouds. And I think when I went in with colour, I kind of overdid the colour, where I should have really desaturated the colours to keep in with that stormy feel, because I just felt it should have worked a lot better. But I know that for future references. So this dip tool that I'm using is the Kurotaki dip pen. I'm using it with the Winsor & Newton ink, and later you'll notice I'm using the Winsor & Newton paint palette, which is the half-pan set, and which I absolutely adore, and the Pro markers, which now Winsor & Newton, to colour in the skin range. I'm not sponsored in any way, shape or form, for those who do ask, who people have asked. No, I just really like the Winsor & Newton range. For some reason, it's just something I've really grown attached to, and it's something I tend to use a lot because it's not too expensive. It is student grade equipment, but I really like how they work and how the style is and everything. It seems to call to me, and I'm really comfortable with this stuff at the moment. I'll probably end up changing into something different, as I usually do. I always tend to switch up my equipment just to try it out, but I do have my comfort zones I go to. you can see with this dip pen, I'm getting really nice line variations with this. Like some of the lines are thicker, some of the lines are thinner. And this is due to how you control the dip pen. If you push hard, slightly harder on it, you can get a thicker line. And if you go to lighter strokes and use it very delicately, you can get very thin lines. And I love doing this line variation because I think it creates a really nice flow to the illustration and makes your work really, I think it just makes it a lot nicer to look at when you have a lot more line variation rather than keeping it all the same, which is why a lot of people tend to like the brush pens, because they do that effect very, very successfully. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there are things that I like about this piece and there are things that I don't like about this piece, and a lot of people would say that this is being harsh on yourself, but I don't think that it's harsh. It's looking back on your work and giving yourself a critical analysis of what you could do to improve this piece, say, in the future. So for example, I feel like her torso looks too short, but that's because the way I've done the trousers, it's quite high-waisted, so it makes it appear that her torso is much shorter than it actually is. So the way I could possibly do that is if I changed the trousers into a skirt, which I did in my original illustration, it would make it make it flow a lot more and not make that torso appear as short. And you can see I ran into some issues here with the ink. Now this is because I didn't let this dry. I had to get all this filming done before London Expo, because I'm in the midst of preparing for London Expo, so I didn't really have time to let the ink dry properly. So this is my fault. This is nothing to reflect on the Winsor & Newton ink. You ideally, if you're going to use wet media with the Winsor & Newton ink, put it aside and let it dry for at least an hour. I would say possibly a day. Same with any illustration you're going to do. If you're going to use wet media on top of markers, give those pens some time to dry, because they're not going to react the way that you want them to if the ink isn't properly dry all the way through. It's the same when you're using alcohol markers with your fine liners or with your inking tools or whatever. You will find sometimes that they will bleed with the pens, and it depends on whether or not your pens will be water soluble, as my fine liners versus watercolors piece, the video I did last month, you'll notice that some pens work better, and it's solely dependent on the ink that's inside them. Now the Winsor & Newton ink does work extremely well with both watercolors and markers, but you need to give that stuff time to dry. So don't make the same mistake I did, because I was rushing this to try and get this video done in time, which, if anyone's at London Expo, make sure to follow me on Twitter for updates and news. I finally got my sketchbooks and some new prints, so you'll be seeing a lot more information up on there, and I'm very excited to be there, and yay, it's going to be very exciting. I'm very nervous but very excited at the same time. So going into the concept for this piece, I'm just really trying to build up layers. I think at this point you can see I went over the pro markers, and there's the cat. I went over with pro markers, and then I've gone in with my paintbrush. Pro markers and wet media actually work pretty well together to create this sort of shading, which almost desaturates the jacket. Is just the Winsor & Newton ink washed down and then going into those shadowy areas, and then I'm building up again with more of the paint, and I'm just wiping down the excess paint to create more. With this illustration, it's particularly on her face, I've done this band of darkness across her eyes, and this is just to make those eyes and that area extremely intense and very dark looking. Do apologise for the cat. She's been very, very cuddly and loving lately, and she just every time I'm filming, she just wants to be in the video. She just wants all the spotlight for herself. But now I do like this illustration, as I explained earlier. There is, if I was to do this illustration again, there'd be stuff that I would change and stuff that I would go back and improve, just because I think there is a lot to look back on. This illustration currently is not for sale, just because I want to keep it as a personal piece for now. In the future that may change, but I just want to keep it for now so that I can go back, reflect on it and see how I could improve it in the future. Because right now, even though I'm looking at it and I do like certain aspects of it, I like to go back and have a look in the future at how I could improve my illustrations. And this is why I tend to keep a lot of my illustrations unless I'm particularly proud of them and I've already made them into a print. Which, speaking of, the Echo and Location originals are up on the store, as well as a few other originals as well. There are prints that have just arrived, which will be arriving up on the store after I finish this convention, just because I won't have time to be able to deal with them on the store. So this is the part I think I really overdid this. I think I added too much lightning, whereas it looked better when it was just a few forks of lightning. I think I added too much, and it's because while I was doing the illustration I was looking at it going, it's not enough, it's not enough, it's not enough. This is very important. I'm just going to say this now. There comes a part where you start to learn when you're doing an illustration where you've gone too far. Like sometimes like too much detail overdoes the illustration and it just overcrowds it, and it doesn't make the illustration any better if you adding all that detail. In fact, it just makes it look messy, and this is how I feel with this. As I said earlier, there are aspects I like about this illustration, but at the same time there are things that could be majorly improved on this. And if I had time, for example now, I would go back and completely change this illustration. I would make a lot less lightning in the background and just have a few simple forks of lightning, and make the rain more prominent in there, just because I think this would make up a more interesting illustration. I think all the lightning that's in the background is just too much of it, and it doesn't translate very well. It just makes it look messy, if that makes any sense. And this is important. As I said earlier, with your illustration, you'll come to a point where you realize where too much is too much, and I think I really got in my head with this one, and I just kept on building, and I took a step back and went, oh god, I've done too much. And I'm just going in with my pencil crayons to create a bit more shading and to really deepen the illustration. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this and my thoughts on my process behind this. If you guys like this video, maybe leave a little like and comment on, let me know. I want to see what you guys are up to and what you guys think about this illustration, and do you like doing stuff that's kind of emotional and out there and different, because that's what I really want to step out with lately and try out. And maybe if you wish to see more content from me, maybe hit that little subscribe button, and I'll see you in my next video. Have a wonderful day, guys, and stay creative.